So the theme has already been given there, which is building a sustainable business by making the right strategic choices. So we have used two terms here. One is a sustainable business and the other is strategy and strategic choices. So I'll just briefly explain these two terms so that there is no ambiguity. A sustainable business is one where there is a market and customers are willing to pay a price for the products or services that can make the business return a reasonable amount to shareholders and pay a decent wage to its employees. That's the definition of a sustainable business that we will use, which is it is generating enough profits to give a return to its shareholders and also pay a decent wage to its employees, which is it is not burning capital. So that's the definition we will use for a sustainable business. Now, strategic choices is another way of saying strategy. So, strategy is all about deciding what we will do and what we will not do. What we will not do as a business is as important as what we will do. So, making the right strategic choices is deciding you will do these three things and you will not do these three things. It is about your business model. It's about what business model you will follow, what you will not follow. It's about what kind of people you will hire, what kind of people you will not hire. What kind of cultural choices you will make, what kind of cultural choices you will not make. It's about whether you grow revenue rapidly first and think of profitability later, or think of profitability from day one. So these are choices that all of you as founders need to make. And mostly there are no right choices and wrong choices. So these choices to a large extent depend upon your beliefs, your personality and your mindset. So you need to make those choices. You cannot be everything to everyone, because if you are everything to everyone, you will be nothing to anyone. So that's the essence of making the strategic choices. So what I will do is I will tell you a bunch of stories. Through these stories, I will help you understand what is the meaning of making right strategic choices or making strategic choices. And these are companies that I have either worked with or have closely associated with. So first let me tell you 3 or 4 stories from a company that I recently worked for, which is Big Basket. So sometime in the year 2015, Big Basket was raising money, planning to raise a lot of money. The entire e-commerce was expanding and they were raising money. They were in the market to raise money. And at that point of time, Tiger Global was the hedge fund which had actually bankrolled most of e-commerce in India. So Big Basket team was meeting the partner at Tiger Global. The partner at Tiger Global was Lee Fixell. Lee Fixell is a very interesting person. He changed the way VC investing was done in India. Earlier, the way VC investing was done was that a venture capital firm would do a due diligence with a startup, maybe for 1 month, 2 months. At the end of the 2 month due diligence, would give a check for $2 or $3 million. But what Tiger Global did, what Lee Fixell did, was very different. He would sit in Seattle, do a Skype call with a young founder in India, and if he liked the founder's idea, in 10 minutes he would make up his mind to write a check for $10 million, and that would be wired the next day. So that's the way he changed investing in India. So when Lee Fixell was coming to meet anyone, it was a very important meeting. Because when he decided to fund a startup, every other competitor would be scared. Because this well-funded startup would then burn capital and acquire all the customers of their competitors. So that was the meeting that the Big Basket team was waiting for. Within 10 minutes of that meeting, he came in on time, and in 10 minutes of that meeting, he said, "Your business model sucks. Your business model is not going to scale. And the reason it will not scale is because it is asset heavy." Asset heavy means that if you want to expand into a new city, suppose you want to expand into Surat in Gujarat, he told us, you guys will go build a warehouse there, you will acquire inventory, you will hire people, all that is a very time consuming process. And an asset light model is you will go there, hire delivery boys, put them outside the Big Bazaar store, pick whatever customers want from the Big Bazaar store and deliver to your customers. That's an asset light model. So they said asset light models will scale rapidly. Yours is asset heavy. So sorry, you guys are in for failure. We cannot invest in you. That's the virtual message he gave us. Now, Big Basket had to make a strategic choice. The choice was, should we be inventory led, should we be asset heavy, or should we be asset light? That was a very important choice. Now, when the Pope and the Church of the investing world are telling you that the sun goes around the earth, you begin to wonder whether the sun goes around the earth, or do you really want to change your belief from the fact that the earth goes around the sun? So the choice that Big Basket made was, we will continue to stay with an asset heavy model, which is an inventory light model. That was a very important strategic choice. And the point I'm going to make to you is that a few strategic choices that you make in your business will have a long lasting impact. So make those choices very thoughtfully, very wisely. And there is no right or wrong. You need to think. Don't listen to anybody. Even God can come and tell you that you do this, but if you don't believe that's the right thing to do, don't make the choice. And the reason why Big Basket made the choice of inventory led was simple. They asked the question, why does a customer shop with Big Basket? The answer to that question was, they shop with us because they want to avoid a visit to the physical store. What is the implication of that answer? If they want to avoid a visit to the physical store, it means that if they order 20 items on you, if you deliver 19, it is no good, because for the one item you are forcing the customer to visit a physical store. If they order fruits and vegetables on you, and if you say, sorry, we do only dry grocery, but for fruits and vegetables, please go out to a store and buy, then also you're not solving their problem. So the learning from that was that we had to have an asset heavy model. We needed to own inventory. We needed to control inventory. The other lesson was that we also had to do fruits and vegetables. No company in the world had built an end-to-end supply chain from the farm to the customer doorstep for fruits and vegetables, because it's an extremely wicked supply chain to build. But the customer feedback and response led us to build this F&B supply chain, however difficult it was. So that's a strategic choice the company made. Going inventory heavy or inventory light. Asset heavy or asset light. That was a choice. And it had very long-lasting, deep implications. And every single grocery company which went down the path of asset light either died or they quickly pivoted to an asset heavy model. I'll give you some of the other choices that the company made. By the way, I'm not trying to tell you that Big Basket is a perfect company, that all the choices we made were correct. I'll also give you some flaws where we made mistakes. So one example was, Amazon, for example, used to come to Big Basket from time to time saying that we want to acquire a strategic stake in your company. They were never able to build a grocery business successfully. From time to time, they would come and say, we want to acquire a strategic stake. And from time to time, they would do a due diligence, collect all the information, and go back and try and build a business themselves. They were notorious for that. At one point of time, Big Basket decided, let's find a more reliable long-term partner. So we began talking to Alibaba. So Alibaba talks began progressing well, and Amazon got wind of this. When Amazon got wind of this, they came to us and said, you know what, we will pay you to acquire you 50 to 60% more than what Alibaba is paying you. So that was the deal they came up with. They knew what Alibaba was willing to pay us for a particular stake, for a 30% stake, and they said, we'll pay you 60% more than that. Now, this is like, as an employee, if you get an offer from a company for a salary of 10 lakhs, and you are discussing with that potential employer, and somebody else comes and says, I'll give you an offer of 16 lakhs, what do? Nothing wrong if you accept the 16 lakhs also, but nothing wrong if you stay with your current discussions and stay with 10 lakhs. It's a choice that you need to make, and these choices will have implications. There's no right or wrong choice. You need to decide what is right for you. So when Alibaba came to know about this Amazon coming to us, they were a little worried. They came and told us, are you going to ditch us and then go to Amazon? So the Big Basket team told Alibaba, this is not the way we operate. This is not our belief. When we needed you, you guys came and committed to make an investment and take a stake with us. So we are not going to ditch you. So we stayed with that. So that was a strategic choice the company made. So remember that the strategic choice can be about business models, it can be about hard things, it can be about the softer elements of culture as well. I'll give you another example. At Big Basket again, we had a very stringent prevention of sexual harassment policy. And this was not on paper, but it was a reality. At one point of time, we needed our engineering team to scale rapidly. The engineering head was accused of sexual harassment by a young woman in the team. She called me up late in the evening at 7 o'clock and told me, I want to meet you, can I meet you? From the tone of her voice, I realized that it was an important thing. I met her right then. That's when she told me that the head of engineering has been doing this with me. And then we quickly investigated this. In 24 hours, we found that what she was saying was correct. In less than 48 hours, he was out of this company. The company depended upon engineering to be able to scale. We were at a critical stage in our journey. This was a strategic choice the company had to make, whether to soft pedal this issue or take a hard stand and say, we will live with the consequences of letting this person go. Short-term damage we will live with, but long-term credibility we want to build. So that's a call that the company took. So I'm just giving you some examples, of choices that the company made. What to do and what not to do. From time to time, you will be confronted with these choices. These choices will not always be easy. You will have to take some tough calls. I'll give you some other stories of other companies as well. So I'll tell you the stories of Paytm, I'll tell you the stories of Snapdeal, Rocket Internet, and Ola. Some of the choices they made. So Paytm, for example, was a company in the payment space. It had made multiple pivots. It was doing wonderfully well. Actually, in 2016, sometime in November, December, the Prime Minister came on TV and said that 500 rupee notes and 1000 rupee notes are no longer legal tender. Demonetization happened overnight. And next day, Paytm had put advertisements in the paper with the Prime Minister's picture saying that this is such a wonderful decision to go digital, and Paytm is there ready to go digital. So Paytm benefited in a very big way by the entire process of demonetization. So whether the founder of Paytm did the right thing or not by putting the Prime Minister's picture is a different matter. But Paytm stood to gain a lot. In the process, they raised a lot of capital. They multiplied within weeks of demonetization. They grew overnight. All that they had to do was add servers. They didn't have feet on the street. They didn't have a lot of ground work to do. They just had to add electronic servers. And that's how they scaled. And they raised a lot of capital. Now, when they raised a lot of capital, hubris or arrogance took over. Then they went and tried to build Paytm Mall. I don't know if you know that they tried to build Paytm Mall. Paytm Mall is like Flipkart. It is like Amazon. So they were trying to do what Amazon had taken decades to do, what Flipkart had taken 10 years to do. They had put in a lot of hard work, gone through those difficult journeys. And Paytm thought just by having access to a lot of capital, we can build a business. So the belief that with capital you can solve any problem is a wrong belief. So that was an error they made. So while they built Paytm Mall, which eventually failed, everybody knew that Paytm Mall is destined to fail. There's no way it would compete with Flipkart or Amazon. So while they were building Paytm Mall, PhonePe and Google Pay came from behind and actually took away their core market of payments. So in the core market of payments, Paytm has just less than 15% today. So 45% plus is owned by PhonePe and maybe 35% by Google Pay. So because they lost focus, they made the wrong strategic choice of diversifying into e-commerce. They lost their core business. In the process, they are trying to rediscover what is their core business now. Look at Rocket Internet. Rocket Internet is a German company. The strategic choice they made was that they will not build original businesses. They will copy businesses that have succeeded in the Western world. They will pick a business that succeeded in the US, come to India, identify 2 or 3 smart people, and get them to build it out. So that was the copycat model they adopted. That copycat model worked for some time, but in India it completely failed. All the Rocket Internet companies failed, whether it was a Food Panda or whether it was, Jabong, all of them eventually failed. So the strategic choice they made, which is not building original businesses, but copying businesses that have succeeded, getting smart people to try and build them out without giving them adequate stake, that was a strategic choice they made. It did not work out. And I am not here to pass judgment or tell you what are your strategic choices. Just remember that whatever strategic choice you make will have long-lasting impact. Take the case of Ola. Ola is another company. Ola, for example, made the strategic choice of expanding into food delivery. So you had Zomato and Swiggy doing food delivery. They thought we are in the mobility space. We have, for example, cars and taxis and maybe some two-wheelers also. Therefore, we can build a food delivery business. That food delivery business never worked. That food delivery business, they tried multiple times. Each time they spent 1,000 plus crores, and all the times Ola failed. So this was a strategic choice they made, which is of using their mobility fleet to deliver food. It never worked. So these are some of the strategic choices that did not work. Now you also must have heard of this famous phrase called culture eats strategy for breakfast. I'll tell you a story about how culture eats strategy for breakfast, and therefore the lesson in this is that whatever strategic choice you make, please align it with your culture. Your culture cannot be at odds with the strategy that you pursue. It has to be aligned. Now you might ask me, how can you align culture and strategy? The two are seemingly very different things, but it's not very different if you think about it. I'll just give you one example. I can give you many, but I'll just give you one example. There was this company called Digital Equipment Corporation. This was in the US in the late 70s. It was an iconic company that built microcomputers for smart users. That was their entire belief, which is we will build computers for smart users, not for the dumb users. And Ken Olsen was the founder. The founder decided that to build computers for the smart user, we have to hire smart people to build those computers. If you have to retain smart people, you have to give them a lot of freedom. So the entire culture at DEC was a collegial culture where there was complete freedom, a non-hierarchical environment. Nobody could overrule anybody else. Ken Olsen could not decide that somebody else should not do something else. It was a very, very highly democratic, collegial, informal culture. So that was the culture that DEC created. It was an extremely successful organization for a period of time. So that was a strategic choice they had made, which is build computers for smart users and create a culture which will enable the company to build computers for smart users. At some point of time, IBM decided that they need to enter the personal computer space because the mainframe business was actually, flattening out. So then they realized that, the growth area is going to be personal computing. So they actually took a small team from IBM headquarters, relocated them to Florida, gave them a lot of freedom to do what they wanted outside of the IBM bureaucracy. They could decide whatever they wanted to do. They could use, third-party products, third-party services, and assemble a good personal computer. And they came up with a wonderful personal computer which operated on Microsoft operating system. Now, when this computer became successful, and by the way, they designed and built this personal computer for the dumb user. And they found that smart users also preferred to use computers that were designed for the dumb users because they also did not want complexity of the product. They did not want a product to have too many features which were not relevant. So when the IBM PC became successful, DEC had to respond. And it became very difficult for DEC to respond because of the culture at DEC. The culture was that anybody could think independently and do what they wanted. So 4 engineering teams at Digital came up with 4 different products. Each of those 4 products had their own bells and whistles, excess features which were not required. They were all launched into the marketplace, and all the 4 products bombed. So this is a very good indication of when your culture is not aligned to your strategy, you are bound to fail. The strategy that DEC was trying to implement at that point of time was to create a commoditized product. A commoditized product like a PC required a lot of discipline. It required hierarchy. It required a structured decision-making process. It did not accept a process where things were chaotic. Chaotic situations were good for creativity, but chaotic situations caused damage when it came to releasing a product which required, discipline and rigor. So that was how, Digital Equipment as a company failed. I'll just take some other examples about, some choices that companies made, companies that you know about. So for example, Zomato and Swiggy, I'll just contrast the two. So both were trying to expand. Both started in the food delivery. Actually, Zomato did not start in the food delivery. They started in restaurant rating business. They pivoted to food delivery, and they did an awesome job of food delivery. To give credit to them, they did an awesome job. They very quickly adapted to what it takes to deliver food reliably, they created a strong operations engine. Although Swiggy was a much stronger operations engine. But these guys actually, caught up almost. Now, when the food delivery business began flattening out, everybody was thinking, what other things we can do, where there's repeat purchase. So the obvious choice was grocery. Grocery is an area where repeat purchases happen. So both of them decided to enter grocery. Look at the choices they made. Swiggy's choice was build it organically. And that's how they created Instamart, which is they built the entire business organically. And the reason they built it organically was they believed they understood operations well through food delivery. They felt that using that operations capability in food delivery into grocery delivery can be a strong thing for them. And they felt that there is no good acquisition candidate. So they spoke to multiple candidates. So they built it out organically. Now Zomato went the other way, which is they went and acquired Blinkit. They paid almost 4,000 crores to acquire Blinkit. Now that's a company, that's a choice they have made. So one made a strategic choice of going down the path of organically building something. One went down the path of acquiring. Now only time will tell, which was a better choice. Now when the choice was made to acquire Blinkit, if you look behind the scenes, there were some other reasons also. For example, the founder of Blinkit, his wife was a co-founder at Zomato. So probably pure merit did not operate when they acquired. And Blinkit as a company had been seen by many other potential acquirers in the past. And the balance sheet and entire operations was found to be quite hollow. Yet Zomato went and acquired that. So it's a choice they have made, time will tell. So here is again an example of a strategic choice that was made very differently. So maybe I will just tell you a few more strategic choices and talk to you about that. So I talked to you about culture and strategy, right? I talked to you the story of Digital Equipment Corporation. I'll give you the story of Big Basket trying to enter the beauty business and why it failed. Now, Big Basket was in the same situation as Digital Equipment Corporation, which was the company believed operations is very critical. Operation strength is very critical. So the entire company was built on an operationally strong platform. The ability to deliver, the ability to execute at Big Basket was amazing. But they were not a creative company. Big Basket was not a creative company. So Big Basket failed to understand that a beauty business cannot be built through operational excellence. A beauty business is a brand business. So for example, Big Basket thought that we run warehouses. We run last mile deliveries. In our warehouses, along with grocery, we will also store beauty products. And along with our deliveries of grocery, we will also deliver beauty products. What a beautiful set of synergies, they thought. So looked at it entirely from a perspective of operations. Whereas users of beauty products, for example, my daughter, I asked her once, do you know that Big Basket delivers beauty products? I see you ordering from Nykaa every alternate day, some things keep coming. Do you know that? She reluctantly said, yes, I think I know that. But I don't want to be seen shopping for beauty products on Big Basket. I don't want my friends to know that I buy beauty products on Big Basket. Because it's a grocery company. So Big Basket's Instagram page had no followers. Its content on Instagram was very poor, whereas Nykaa did an amazing job of branding. They hired the right kind of people. They developed the right kind of social media communication. They did an awesome job. And they were users of beauty products. In Big Basket, the people who ran beauty products never used beauty products. There was not a woman in the team. It was all a bunch of males who never believed beauty was even important. So they were building the beauty business. So see the culture, how it did not go well with the kind of strategy that the company was trying to do. So Big Basket's beauty business remains mediocre. So we also do beauty, but we are not a leader. I'll give you an example of a couple of stories, where culture and strategy were not aligned. So you need to think, again, from time to time, whether your strategy is aligned to your culture. And what is your culture? Your culture is the core personality of who you are. If your core personality of who you are does not align with what you're trying to do, then it's bound to fail. So that's really about the culture. I'll give you some other examples of strategic choices, talk to you about sustainability a little more, and then we'll open it up for questions. There were two companies called Daksh and Spectromine in 2002. When I started my career in the startups, both the companies were good and they made slightly different strategic choices. Spectramind, for example, said, we don't mind doing BOT contracts, build, operate, transfer. They were called BOT contracts. Daksh took a call, we will not do BOT contracts. Because what happens if you do BOT contracts is that you develop revenue over a period of, let's say, 12 months, 18 months. But when you make the transfer, all that revenue falls off. So there are phases when your revenue grows and the revenue falls off a cliff. So at Daksh, the choice we made was we will not do BOT contracts because it's too unpredictable. Revenue growth is unpredictable. Whereas Spectramind made the choice. No choice was right or wrong. But then, Daksh was acquired by IBM, Spectramind got acquired by Wipro. Things happened. But these were choices to be made. So I think these are choices that you will be confronted with from time to time. I'll just tell you a little bit about strategy. Have you heard of fox and the hedgehog strategy? A fox is someone who can do many things reasonably well. Whereas a hedgehog is one that does just one thing well. A fox can never hunt a hedgehog, can never kill a hedgehog, because it does that one thing of defending itself very well. So in companies also you will find foxes, you will find hedgehogs. It depends upon the founder mindset. So you have to decide whether you're a fox or a hedgehog. I'll give you some examples of hedgehog companies in India. Big Basket is a classic example of hedgehog. Book My Show is a classic example. InMobi is an example of a hedgehog. Swiggy, to a large extent, is an example of a hedgehog, which is they will do one thing really well. Whereas Amazon is a bit of a fox. They try and do multiple things. Paytm tried in doing multiple things. They tried to do all, including Paytm Mall. It did not work. Some things worked for Amazon, it did not work for Paytm. Ola is also fox. It has tried to do multiple things. You need to figure out who you are, what strategy you need to follow. It's also called, you need to follow an inch wide and a mile deep strategy, or an inch deep and a mile wide strategy. My own personal belief is that to build a very customer-centric brand, you need to be inch wide and mile deep, which is you need to go deep into the segment that you're operating in, understand your customers completely and deeply understand them and build that business very well. Only after you have completely cracked it, it may make sense to go to adjacencies. But some founders would like to get into adjacencies even before they deeply understand the customer segment in which they are operating. My own belief is that a hedgehog strategy is more likely to succeed in most circumstances, whereas a fox strategy is a bit of a high-risk strategy. It depends upon availability of capital, your access to a lot of capital, burning a lot of capital, and eventually it may not build a great customer-centric company. So that's what I wanted to tell you about. Also, maybe tell you a little bit about pivots. Pivots are something that are probably inevitable as you grow a business. A pivot, you might ask me, what's a pivot? The word is taken from the basketball context. In basketball, what a pivot really means is that you keep one foot steady on the ground and just swivel the other foot to dodge an opponent player or to make room for you to be able to pass or score. So one foot is rooted in reality. So that's really about pivots when it comes to a business, which is one foot is retained in your core capability. So your core capability remains the same. You might figure out that this customer segment is probably not the customer segment, or the problem I'm solving is not probably the best application of my capability. Let me apply it to a slightly different problem. So that's called making a pivot. Many companies have made pivots. For example, Make My Trip and Yatra. Make My Trip made that pivot, Yatra did not make a pivot. Both were in airline ticketing. But very quickly, Make My Trip realized that airline ticketing is not profitable because there were only 5 airlines at that time. And because there were 5 airlines, they were not willing to part with a lot of margin to Make My Trip because you could go to the airline website and book your tickets. So airline companies did not give a lot of margin to Make My Trip. So airline ticketing was not a profitable business. So they quickly understood this and pivoted to hotels. Hotels was a very interesting business for the simple reason that hotels is very disaggregated, unlike airlines. There were 5 airlines, but there are 50,000 types of hotels in different parts of India, tier 2, tier 3 cities. And these hotels did not know how to get customers, and customers did not know how to discover these hotels. So they created a very strong operations team on the ground and built out the hotels business. And they became a $2 billion company, whereas Yatra remained a sub $500 million company. So question is, why couldn't Yatra also follow? Now, making that pivot and making it succeed requires a lot of hard work and deep belief that that's important, which Make My Trip demonstrated. So they grew on to become a very large company. So these were some of the pivots. Duck Scholl's United Lex is a outsourcing company. They also made a pivot. For example, they were into legal services outsourcing. So legal services outsourcing can be about contracts. So when they were doing these contracts outsourcing, they realized that when you go to a client, there were several decision makers in the client organization. Each business bought contracting services independently. So the same sale had to be made to multiple people in different parts of the client organization. It was a very difficult process. So they made the pivot to legal, disputes. And there they found when it came to legal dispute resolution, the buying was all centralized. And therefore they had to make the sale only to one individual or one entity within the client organization. So the pivot was made because the sales process for the current client base or for the current service was not very effective. Sales process was not very effective. So maybe one or two more things I will tell you. They may not be directly related to this. I will tell you about values and valuation and inherent value. You must have seen, lots of companies getting very high valuations. Sometimes, you find a unicorn valued at 10 billion, Baiju was valued at 20 billion, Paytm at 16 billion. Now, in the last year, many of these companies went public. The world was waiting with bated breath in terms of, how these Indian tech companies would do. And you know what happened? So Paytm, for example, privately was valued at $20 billion. Its value fell to almost 20% of what it was. Its market price dropped to 20%. 80% was eroded. So it's now less than $4 billion. Zomato market value was completely eroded. So the question is, when you build a business, remember that valuations are superficial. They don't mean anything, especially private valuations. The only valuation is the way valuation has been defined traditionally, which is a multiple of EBITDA. If you're a loss-making company, if you're burning cash, if your profit is not adequate, remember that someday your valuation can come off. In fact, in my book, Pony to Unicorn, we had talked of 3 companies and predicted in 2020 what will happen to these 3 companies in future. The 3 companies we predicted was Big Basket, Paytm, and Ola. We said Big Basket's valuation after it goes public will be the same as its private market valuation because its inherent value was the same as the valuation at all points of time. And we said, Ola is overvalued, but it can become profitable. It is loss-making, but it can become profitable because the levers are very simple. And the levers are increase the rates to customers and reduce the, bonuses to the drivers. So if you do these 2 steps, then the company can become profitable. But we said if they do these 2 things, the market will shrink. And if the market shrinks, it will no longer be a $6 billion company, it will be a $2 billion company. So we said Ola, when it lists, will see a collapse of valuation. And we said Paytm, we have no clue what it's doing. It is everything to everyone. We don't even know what business it is in. So only time will tell. So this is a little bit about valuations and value. Don't chase valuations. Build a company that is solving a real problem, creating amazing customer delight. Be that inch wide, mile deep. Go deep into your business. Understand problems. Obsess with customer experience. And your business will automatically get built. Valuations will automatically get created. And the last thing I want to tell you is about product market fit. From time to time, you will ask this question to yourself. Have I got a product market fit? The question is, what is the meaning of a product market fit? The soft indicators of a product market fit for a B2C company are people are lining up outside your doors and willing to pay you money to buy your product. As long as people are telling you it's a good product but are not willing to pay you for that, trust me, there's no product market fit. If you're a B2B company and if you're going and talking to your clients and they are not telling you that we want to meet you today, then you have a problem. If they're saying come back after 2 weeks or 2 months, you have a problem with the product market fit. If they tell you why didn't we meet you 6 months back, trust me, you have got some degree of product market fit. So these are some of the soft indicators. I'll give you one hard indicator, which is simple. For example, if your customers are telling you they have got a great customer experience, that in itself is not indication of a good product market fit. Because if you give stuff free to your customers, people will be very excited. They will tell you wonderful things. But does that mean your business can ever make money? Business can never make money. So your product market fit is attained only if customers are willing to pay you a price that can make you profitable and yet are delighted. So the metric that you can use is LTV divided by CAC. That's a magical metric. LTV is lifetime value and CAC is customer acquisition cost. You divide one by the other and you get magic. So LTV is lifetime value of a customer, which is annual, purchase revenue, how many times they repeat during their lifetime, and churn. So if churn is low, your lifetime value is high. If the ticket size is high, your lifetime value is high. If repeats are high, lifetime value is high. And if the quality of revenue is high, lifetime value is high. Quality of revenue means, is it profitable? So these are indicators. So if you have all of them as good, but profitability is bad, quality of revenue is bad, then you have not got product market fit. Now, and CAC is total marketing expenditure spend divided by the number of new customers you acquired. So if the marketing spend is low, it means your word of mouth is high. So word of mouth means customers are willing to recommend your product to others. So apply this LTV divided by CAC to different companies that you know. Many of them will be negative. Many of the large companies will be negative. Even a Baiju will be negative. So negative is worthless. So it should be positive. And not just positive, it should be maybe 3 or 4. So LTV by CAC, if it is 3 or 4 or more, then you're building an amazing business. So let me pause here. So I think I've said what I wanted to, and we can have any questions if you have.
So you mentioned some companies are overvalued, right? Then why is somebody ready to pay for invest in it? I mean, they think it is not, right? So what you said is your own take on it, right?
Yeah. So the reason why some people are willing to pay are many reasons. So for example, there's something called the bigger fool theory, which means that I will invest in something hoping that some other bigger fool will come and buy it at a higher price than what I have paid for. I'm just giving a very simplistic example. It's not just in private markets, but it happens also in public markets. And sometimes the reason why companies are overvalued is because there are some investors who want to make big bets in this world. And the bets that they want to make are either we really, hit the ball out of the park or we cop out. And they're okay with both extremes. So they will bet saying that this company has an early mover advantage, has a network effect, and therefore can become the single biggest player in this space. So we will bet blindly on it. But they are all wise investors. So when retail investors invest, it is foolish to go and buy Paytm stock, because people who have invested in Paytm are refined investors who can understand these things and take those kind of bets. But I think in most businesses, it's important to build it in a very sound way.
I have a question, is it possible to build a sustainable business? Yeah, is it possible to build a sustainable business in the asset-heavy model?
Yeah, a sustainable business definition you have to understand. I'm defining a sustainable business very simply, which is as long as a business can make money, can make profits without burning too much of capital on a continuous basis or consuming too much of capital, is a sustainable business. For example, a Kirana store in your neighborhood, which is running for 10 years, is a sustainable business because the guy is making profits. It keeps his lights on at home. It feeds his family. So any business which can be run profitably is sustainable, irrespective of whether it can become a very big company by scaling exponentially or without scaling exponentially. That's the definition of a sustainable business. So a asset-heavy model of Big Basket ended up making money. At the end of it, as long as you make money, it's sustainable.
Nothing special, sir. So you first time based on the introduction, you mentioned that a sexual harassment policy. You mentioned, right? So I want to know that the internal policy system in a business, how involved the business and how involved to the business and how safely sustainable make to the business to make it plan the proper policies and procedures.
I'll just explain that a little more.
You already mentioned that sexual harassment policy,
I talked
not
about
in the paper,
yeah,
but they already implemented.
Implemented well.
Right. So some of the employees, they will never accept it if not mentioned in place, right? So are you preferring to mention the place, the policies and procedure, right process, or
Yeah, yes. So the policy has to state what are the consequences of engaging in sexual harassment. That policy is there. And the point I'm making is that most companies have a policy on paper that if you engage in sexual harassment, you will be fired. But no company, very few companies take that seriously. So when something like this happens, they tend to, backpedal, or they tend to soft pedal, or they don't take it very seriously. They find reasons why they need not implement it. The point I was making was that take the policy seriously and make it real on the ground. Only then people will believe that. Otherwise, people don't believe what's on paper. They will believe what you do.
so any other related policies, procedures you are suggesting to save custody of the business?
Yeah, code of conduct. Every company should have a code of conduct. That policy, the code of conduct will be around things like, for example, conflict of interest. You will not do business with your relatives and friends, for example, or you will not accept gifts from vendors. So, code of conduct is important for every company to have, small or big.
Thank you, because all the entrepreneurs' headache is right resources. So some of the resources they can improve themselves and they contribute the right contribution to the company. Some resources intentionally making to the problem to the organization or company. So that's I'm asking. Thank you.
Thank you.
My question is regarding the word sustainable.
I think the mic,
My question is regarding the word sustainable and the context on which you have spoken about sustainable business. The system boundaries which you are putting forward when you specifically speak about sustainable business, is it very shallow?
The definition of sustainable?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can define sustainable in many ways. So the way currently sustainability is being defined by the world is, circular economy, where you don't create an unnecessary burden on the planet, creating plastics, creating emissions. That's one way of defining sustainability. I was keeping a very simple definition of sustainability where a business will survive without burning too much capital. So sustainability to me can be seen in many ways. That's why I clarified upfront right from the beginning my meaning of sustainability.
And if we increase that system boundaries to include the customer perspectives while designing a solution for the problem which later becomes a business, what all points do you suggest outside this context of the talk?
You have to give me some example to understand.
For example, the UN has given 17 SDG goals, which is actually an amalgamation of different sectors.
Correct.
And when you solve a problem, you don't specifically solve one perspective of the problem.
Correct.
You need to tackle different perspectives.
Correct.
Like if you go for poverty alleviation, which is SDG 1, you automatically do take into consideration gender equality and gender, which you talked about now. So when you think on that perspective, when you think with your system boundaries very wide, including all these, of which one is finance and one is strategy, what all points you need to be taken care of when you're deciding?
So I'm not an expert in that sustainability the way United Nations have defined SDGs. I don't really deeply understand that. I haven't spent too much time. All I can tell you from what you were saying is that design thinking is a very very integral part of solving those kind of problems. Because design thinking means that when you solve a particular problem, that invariably creates some other problem. So when you think of this holistically, that's called design thinking. For example, in a city, if you have to improve traffic, you can just say put a flyover. But the flyover is going to create some other problems, which you don't imagine. And once you build the flyover and then those other problems begin manifesting themselves, then you begin thinking about those. So to address the SDGs, I think you need design thinking, which is think about a problem more holistically in terms of what impact it has. But I'm not an expert, let me tell you upfront.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Actually, sir, you already mentioned in detail regarding strategy business. Just for a clarification, I am asking, sir. So you mentioned about that big basket. You were looking for some investment option with investment discussions. At that time, they were mentioned about heavy asset model.
Yeah.
So actually, at that time, that big basket was facing some financial issues, right, sir? So then why you stick with that heavy asset model?
Oh, no, we were not facing with any financial issues.
Okay.
So for growing, we needed money. So our belief was that asset heavy model is the right way to grow. But every business model requires capital.
Okay.
So we were looking for capital, but from someone who believed that asset heavy is the right way to scale. We didn't ever, we were not in financial trouble or anything.
Okay,
Every business needs money to scale, capital to scale. We also needed capital, that's all.
Okay, then that means if that asset-heavy model is directly related to that sustainable business.
Yeah, asset-heavy model was the only way, because that is the only way in which a customer problem could be solved. An asset-light model would never have solved a customer problem. And the customer problem was that I do not want to visit a physical store. I want delivery in my home. If that is the problem statement, asset-light model will not solve. So creating an asset-light model for the sake of creating an asset-light model is not good. It has to solve a customer problem, right? You are solving a customer problem. Your business model has to address that customer need. And we felt that asset-light model is not going to address that customer need. And the only way to do it was to own the inventory.
One more question. So can you example about boat contract? One more example, please.
What?
BOT contract you mentioned,
Boot.
right? Yes, boat contract.
So it can be build, own, operate, transfer. So those are contracts, for example, if some company from outside, Citibank comes to India and says, you know what, build an offshore center for us. And we build that offshore center, we own it, we run it for them. After some time, after 5 years, we transfer it to them, which is they buy it out from us. That's called build, own, operate, transfer. Anything else? We can take it anything offline as well. Thank you all. Thanks.